Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next session of Indian Business Houses. This is Dr. Swati Mishra from International School of Business Management at Suresh Gambiar University, Jaipur. And today we will be discussing some new, fresh topic of the 5 year plans of India. Yes, we have been discussing in the past session as to what were the policy changes that were brought in by the government of India, which actually supported the Indian business houses to grow and groom in this economy, and how they established a stable economic condition in the country. And then we started, uh, started our pace and gaining our pace in the globalized economy, and the wings of the economy started flattering and flapping. And today we will be discussing about another very important aspect, which is the 5 year plans of India. So basically, this session aims to give the learners an understanding of the concept behind these 5 year plans, to brief the learners about the evolution and history of the 5 year plans in India, to make the learners go through the various 5 year plans that were introduced by Indian government post independence, to also help the learners observe the reforms which were brought in by these 5 year plans and how they impacted the Indian business scenario. So, after this session, the learners will have an understanding of the concept behind the 5 year plans. They will have a brief knowledge about the evolution and history of the 5 year plans in India also, and they'll be aware of the 5 year plans that were introduced by the Indian government post independence. They'll be having an idea about the reforms brought in by these 5 year plans and how they impacted the Indian business scenario. So, before we actually start discussing the 5 year plans that were introduced in India, I would just like to introduce you to the history and evolution of these 5 year plans concept, as to who started this. So basically, this session aims to delve into the system of 5 year planning, its inception, their goals, and their outcomes from the perspective of the SCSC, CGL, CHSL, banking examinations, and also for the BBA and MBA purposes. So let's talk in brief about the history of these 5 year plans. The first ever 5 year plan was implemented by Joseph Stalin in the Soviet Union in 1928. Various communist and capitalist states adopted the idea and subsequently formulated the plans of their own. And ever since India got its independence, there was a common consensus of everyone to undertake the development through these 5 year plans. So this is how actually the concept of 5 year plans was brought into India. So from almost 1947 till 2017, the Indian economy was premised on the concept of planning. This was carried through the 5 year plans, which were developed, executed, and monitored by the Planning Commission, which existed right from 1951 till 2014. And of course, the Niti Aayog, which was actually installed in 2015. With the Prime Minister as the ex officio chairman, the Commission has a nominated deputy chairman who holds the rank of a cabinet minister. Montek Singh Ahluwalia is the last deputy chairman of the Commission, and he resigned on 26th May 2014. The 12th plan completed its term in March 2017. Prior to the fourth plan, The allocation of state resources was based on schematic patterns rather than a transparent and objective mechanism, which led to the adoption of the Gargid formula in 1969. Revised versions of the formula have been used uh, since then to determine the allocation of central assistance of these state plans. The new government, which was led by Narendra Modi, elected in 2014, has announced the dissolution of the Planning Commission and its replacement by a think tank called the Niti Aayog, which is an acronym of National Institution for Transforming India. So now let us move ahead and talk a bit about the 5 year plans. As I just said, that they are centralized and integrated national economic programs. If you go back to the history and talk about Joseph Stalin, who implemented the first 5 year plan in Soviet Union, I just told you that, like for example, China continues to use the 5 year plans, although China renamed its 11th 5 year plan from 2006 to 2010 a guideline GIHUA rather than a plan GIHUA to signify the central government's more hands off approach to development. India launched its first 5 year plan in 1951, immediately after independence, under the socialist influence of India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. So now let us move ahead and start discussing as to what these 5 year plans were. So these 5 year plans, as I just told you, were laid to rest by Narendra Modi-led NDA government in 2015. Hence, the 12th 5 year plan is considered the last 5 year plan of India. The decades-old 5 year plan was replaced by a 3 year action plan, which will be a part of a 7 year strategy paper and 15 year vision document. The Niti Aayog has replaced the Planning Commission in the Modi cabinet and launched 3 year action plan from 1st April 2017 onwards. So this first 5 year plan, the first Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru presented the first 5 year plan to the Parliament of India and needed an urgent attention. The first 5 year plan was launched in 1951, which mainly focused in the development of the primary sector. The first 5 year plan was based on the Harrod Domer model and with a few modifications. The total planned budget of rupees 2069 crores, and later it was allocated 2378 crores, was allocated to seven broad areas, which included irrigation, energy, agriculture, community development, transport, communications, industries, social services, rehabilitation of landless farmers, and for other sectors and services also. So the most important feature of this phase was active role of state in all economic sectors. Such a role was justified at that time because immediately after independence, India was facing basic problems, deficiency of capital and low capacity to save. The target growth rate was 2.1% annual gross domestic product growth. The achieved growth rate was 3.6%. The net domestic product went up by 15%. The monsoon was good, luckily, and there were relatively high crop yields. So, initially the monsoon was good and there were relatively high crop yields, which boosted the exchange reserves and the per capita income, which increased by 8%. National income increased more than the per capita income due to the rapid population growth. Many irrigation projects were initiated during this period, including the Bhakra, Hirakud, Netter Dam, and Damodar Valley dams. The World Health Organization, with the Indian government, addressed the children's health and reduced the infant mortality, indirectly contributing to the population growth. At the end of the planned period in 1956, five Indian institutes of technology were started as major technical institutions. The University Grant Commission was also set up to take care of the funding and take measures to strengthen the higher education system in the country. Contracts were signed to start five steel plants, which came into existence in the middle of the second 5 year plan. The plan was quasi-successful for the government. So now let's have a look at the second 5 year plan. The second 5 year plan actually focused on the development of public sector and of course rapid industrialization. This was also launched between 1956 to 1961 under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru. So it was based on the PC Mahalanobis model made in the year 1953, and its main focus, as I said, was on industrial development. So the plan basically attempted to determine the optimal allocation of investment between the productive sectors in order to maximize the long run economic growth. It used the prevalent state of the art techniques of operations research and optimization, as well as the novel applications of the statistical models developed at the Indian Statistical Institute. The plan assumed a closed economy in which the main trading activity would be centered on importing the capital goods. Hydroelectric power projects, five steel plants at Bhilai, Durgapur, Rourkela were established, coal production was increased, railway lines were added, and Tata also introduced its Tata Institute of Fundamental Research and Atomic Energy at that time. Then, uh, in 1957, a talent search and scholarship program was begun. The total amount allocated under the second 5 year plan in India was 48 billion. This amount was allocated amongst the various sectors: power, irrigation, social service, communication, transport, and other miscellaneous. The targeted growth rate was 4.5% and the actual growth rate was 4.27. And that is why they did not consider it to be so successful. The plan was also criticized by classical liberal economist B.R. Shenoy, who noted that the plan's dependence on the deficit financing to promote heavy industrialization was actually the main cause of the trouble. He argued that state control of the economy would undermine a young democracy. India faced external payments crisis also in 1957, which is viewed as a confirmation of Shenoy's argument. So now let's have a look at the third 5 year plan, which was again launched under the leadership of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru between 1961 till 66. And this plan actually stressed on agriculture and improvement in the production of wheat. But and this plan is also called as the Gargil Yojana after the deputy chairman of the Planning Commission, D.R. Gargil. The main target of this plan was to make the economy independent. The stress was laid down on, as I said, agriculture and improved production of wheat. And unfortunately, the brief Sino-Indian War of 1962 exposed the weaknesses in the economy and shifted the focus towards defense industry and Indian army. So in 1965 till 66, India fought a war with Pakistan also. So there was also a severe drought in 1965, and this war led to severe inflation, and the priority was shifted to price stabilization then. So the construction of dams continued, many cement and fertilizer plants were also built. Punjab started producing abundance of wheat. Many primary schools were started in the rural sectors. Panchayat elections were started. The states were given more development responsibilities. For the first time, India resorted to borrowing from the IMF. Rupee value devalued for the first time in 1966. State electricity boards, state secondary education boards were formed at that time. So these were the major reforms that were done, and the target growth rate was actually 5.6, but because of all these problems that came along, the achieved growth rate, the actual growth rate that was achieved, was only 2.4%. So the third 5-year plan, also called as this Gargil Yojana, was actually based on the John Sandy and Sukhmoy Chakraborty's model, and wasn't even as successful as it was expected to be. So due to this miserable failure of the third plan, the government was actually forced to declare some plan holidays from 1966 till 1967, and 1967 till 68, and 68 till 69. So, three annual plans were drawn during this intervening period. So during 66 till 67, there was again the problem of drought, and equal priority was given to agriculture, its allied activities, and of course the industrial sector also. So then the government of India declared devaluation of the rupee to increase the exports of the country, and the main reasons for the planned holidays were actually the war and the lack of resources and the increase in inflation that occurred during the third 5-year plan. After this, the fourth 5-year plan was actually introduced. By this time, India had a new prime minister and a new leadership, and it was none other than Indira Gandhi who was the prime minister this time. And the Indira Gandhi government actually nationalized 14 major Indian banks at that time, and green revolution in India was advanced, um, and really, it started that time, and a lot of advanced agricultural practices were introduced at that time. And of course, the situation in East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, was becoming dire as the Indo Pakistan War of 1971 and Bangladesh Liberation War took place. And this took a lot of funds which were earmarked for actually the industrial development. India also performed the Smiling Buddha underground nuclear test in Pokhran, which was the Pokhran 1 test in Rajasthan in 1974, partially actually in response to the United States deployment of the Seventh Fleet in the Bay of Bengal. The fleet had been deployed to warn India against attacking West Pakistan and extending the war. So the target growth rate was 5.6%, but the actual growth rate which was achieved was only 3.3%. During this time, the family planning programs were also, implemented, which was one of the major targets in this plan because of the, outburst of the population that was occurring. And later on came the fifth 5-year plan. So the fifth 5-year plan actually laid stress on employment, poverty, elevation of the um, poverty actually. Indira Gandhi had that time come up with the slogan that "वो कहते हैं Indra हटाओ," which means that the other politicians don't want Indra as the prime minister and her government to prevail in India. But मैं कहती हूँ गरीबी हटाओ, which means that she was saying that instead of removing need, try to remove poverty, and that is why she was working a lot on elevation of poverty. So the plan also focused on self-reliance in agricultural production and defense. In 1978, the newly elected Morarji Desai government rejected the plan. The Electricity Supply Act was amended in 1975, which enabled the central government to enter into power generation and transmission. The Indian National Highway system was introduced and many roads were widened to accommodate the increasing traffic. Tourism was also expanded at that time. The 20-point program was launched in 1975. It was followed from 1974 till 1979. The Minimum Needs Program, which is also known as MNP, was introduced in the first year of the fifth 5-year plan from 1974 till 78, and the objective of this program was to provide certain basic minimum needs and thereby improve the living standards of the citizens of India. And it was actually prepared and launched by DP Dhar. The targeted growth rate of this plan was actually 4.4%, and the actual growth rate that was achieved was 4.8%. So this plan was rather considered more successful than any other plans. And then the Janata Party government actually came into power, and the Janata Party government rejected the fifth 5-year plan and introduced a new sixth 5-year plan in 78 till 1980. This plan was again rejected by Indian National Congress government in 1980, and a new sixth plan was made. The rolling plan consisted of three kinds of plans. So after the termination of the fifth 5-year plan, the rolling plan came into effect from 78 till 90, the rolling plan basically consisted of three kinds of plans that were proposed. The first plan was for the present year, which comprised the annual budget, and the second plan was a plan for a fixed number of years, which may be 3, 4, or 5 years. The second plan kept changing as per the requirements of the Indian economy. The third plan was a perspective plan for long terms, like 10, 15, 20 years. Hence, there was no fixation of dates for the commencement and termination of the plan in the rolling plans. The main advantage of the rolling plans was that they were flexible and were able to overcome the rigidity of fixed 5-year plans by mending targets. The object of the exercise, projections, and allocations as per the changing conditions in the country's economy. Now, of course, this had some disadvantages also. The main disadvantage of this plan was that to achieve the targets that were laid down in the 5-year period, it turned out to be a complex plan actually, and also due to frequent revisions, it resulted in lack of stability of the economy. So after that came the sixth 5-year plan. The sixth 5-year plan actually marked the beginning of the economic liberalization. Price controls were eliminated and ration shops were closed. This led to the increase in the food prices and an increase in the cost of living. This was the end of Nehruvian socialism. The National Bank of Agriculture and Rural Development Bank was established for development of rural areas in 82 by the recommendation of Shivaraman Committee. Family planning was also expanded in order to prevent overpopulation. This was actually based on the investment yojana, infrastructural changing and trend of growth model. And the basic objective, as I said, was economic liberalization by eradicating poverty and achieving technological self-reliance. More prosperous areas of India adopted family planning more rapidly than the less prosperous areas, which continued to have a high birth rate. Then military 5-year plans became coterminous with planning commission's plans from this plan onwards. Of course, the sixth 5-year plan is considered to be successful to the Indian economy because the target growth rate was 5.2%, but the actual growth rate that was achieved after this plan was 5.7%. After this plan came the seventh 5-year plan. Now, by this time, Indira Gandhi ji was assassinated, and after that, Rajiv Gandhi's leadership had come, and the seventh 5-year plan was led by the Congress party with Rajiv Gandhi as the prime minister. The plan laid stress on improving the productivity level of the industries by upgrading of technology. The main objectives of this seventh 5-year plan were actually to establish growth in the areas of uh, increasing economic productivity, production of food grains, generating employment through social justice. As an outcome of the sixth 5-year plan, there had been steady growth in agriculture, controls of the rate of inflation, favorable balance of payments, which had actually provided a strong base for the seventh 5-year plan to build on the need for further economic growth. The seventh plan had strived towards socialism and energy production at a large. The thrust areas of seventh 5-year plan were social justice, removal of oppression of the weak, using modern technology, agricultural development, poverty, anti-poverty programs, full supply of food, clothing, shelter, increasing productivity of small and large scale farmers, and of course making India an independent economy. So then the growth target of this plan was actually supposed to be only 5%, but the achieved growth rate was 6%. So again, this plan was considered to be quite successful. The eighth 5-year plan actually could not take off in 1990 due to the fast changing economic situation, and the center and the years at the center and the years 1990, 91, and 91 to 92 were treated as the annual plans actually, and the eighth plan was formulated for the period of 92 till 97. So let's talk about this eighth 5-year plan now. Its duration was from 1992 till 1997 under the leadership of then Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao. In this plan, the top priority was actually given to the development of human resources. That is the employment, education, public health, and so on. Under the there were only annual plans earlier, and in 1991, India faced a crisis in the foreign exchange reserves, left with reserves only of about US $1 billion. So, under this pressure, the country took the risk of reforming the socialist economy. Narasimha Rao ji was the ninth Prime Minister of the Republic of India and the head of Congress Party then, and led one of the most important administrations in India's modern history, overseeing a major economic transformation and several incidents affecting the national security. At that time, Dr. Manmohan Singh, who became the Prime Minister also of India, launched India's free market reforms that brought the nearly bankrupt nation back from the edge. It was actually the beginning of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. also known as the LPG model. So, in this plan, modernization of the industries was a major highlight of the plan, and a gradual opening of the Indian economy was undertaken to correct the burgeoning deficit and foreign debt. Meanwhile, India became a member of the WTO also on 1st January 1995. The major objectives included controlling population growth, poverty reduction, employment generation, strengthening the infrastructure, institutional building, and development of industrial sector, of course. In this plan, energy was also given a high priority, and the target growth rate was 5.6%, but the actual growth rate that was achieved was considered to be very successful, as it was 6.8%. And then we saw the upcoming of the ninth 5 year plan. This ninth 5 year plan actually came after 50 years of Indian independence. Atal Bihari Vajpayee was the Prime Minister of India during the ninth plan, and the ninth plan tried primarily to use the latent and unexplored economic potential of the country to promote the economic and social growth. It offered strong support to the social spheres of the country in an effort to achieve the complete elimination of poverty. The satisfactory implementation of the eighth 5 year plan was ensured in the state's ability to proceed on the path of faster development. The ninth 5 year plan also saw joint efforts from the public and private sectors in ensuring economic development of the country. The ninth 5 year plan saw contributions towards development from the general public as well as governmental agencies in both rural as well as the urban areas of the country. New implementation measures from the special action plans (SAPs) were evolved during the ninth plan. The SAPs covered the areas of social infrastructure, agriculture, information technology, and water policy. So the main objectives of ninth 5 year plan was to correct the historical inequalities and increase the economic growth in the country. Other aspects which constituted the ninth 5 year plan were population growth, generating employment by giving priority to agriculture and rural development, reduction of poverty, ensuring proper availability availability of primary health care facilities and other basic necessities, empowering the socially disadvantaged classes like scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. So these were actually the main objectives, and a lot of strategies were also implemented. So, but still, a combined effort of all these was essentially for the growth of India's economy, and the targeted growth rate was 7.1%, but the actual growth that was achieved was only 6.8%. So after that, we saw the upcoming of the 10th 5 year plan. The main objectives of this plan were to attain 8% GDP growth per year, reduction of poverty by 5%, providing gainful and high quality employment, at least to the addition to the labor force, reduction in gender gaps in literacy, wage rates by at least 50%, and 25-point program was also introduced. So its duration was actually between 2002 to 2007, under the leadership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji and Manmohan Singh. And this plan basically aimed to double the per capita income of India in the next 10 years. It also aimed to reduce the poverty ratio by 15% by 2012. Its growth target was 8%, but it achieved only 7.6%. After that came the 11th 5-year plan. Its duration was from 2007 till 2012 under the leadership of then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh ji. It aimed to, this was prepared by C. Rangarajan. Its main theme was rapid and more inclusive growth. It achieved a growth rate of 8% against a target of 9% growth. It aimed to increase the enrollment in higher education of 18 to 23 years of age group between 2011 and 12. It focused on distance education, convergence of formal and non-formal distance, distant and IT educational institutes, rapid and inclusive growth, poverty reduction, emphasis on social sector and delivery of service therein, empowerment through education and skill development, reduction of gender equality, environmental sustainability. So lots of such objectives were covered under this plan, and it achieved a growth rate of 8% against the targeted growth rate of 9%. And then came the 12th and the last 5-year plan. Let's have a brief discussion over the 12th plan. Its duration was between 2012 till 2017 under the leadership of Manmohan Singh ji. Its main theme was faster, more inclusive, and sustainable growth. Its growth rate target was 8%. For a long time, there had been a feeling that for a country as diverse and big as India, centralized planning could not work beyond a point due to its one size fits all approach. Therefore, the NDA government has dissolved the Planning Commission, which was replaced by the Niti Aayog. Thus, there was no 13 5-year plan. However, the 5-year defense plan was made. It is important to note that the documents of the Niti Aayog have no financial role. They are only policy guide maps for the government. The 3-year action plan only provides a broad roadmap to the government and does not outline any schemes or allocations, that is, has no financial powers. Since it does not require approval by the Union Cabinet, its recommendations are not binding on the government. So with this, we have discussed all the 5-year plans that have been introduced till now by the Indian government in India. We have also seen the reforms that Indian government tried to bring in and how it supported the industrial sector of India. We have also seen that how the industrial growth rate has been one of the priority and one of the main objectives of each and every 5-year plan that came in, that was launched in India. So then we saw the end of the 5-year plans, and we have almost covered all the aspects that you should or that you need to know about this big policy change. So the 5-year plans have played a great role in lifting India's social sector and building heavy industries. A centralized planning system could ensure that the money gets spent where it was most needed. So why weren't these 5-year plans needed now? Why was it stopped? So for a long time, there had been a feeling that for a country as diverse and big as India, centralized planning could not work beyond a point due to its one size fits all approach. So, moreover, since the Planning Commission used to be controlled by the central government, it often ended up as a tool to punish the states ruled by the opposition parties when it came to allocating the funds. Due to the top to bottom approach in centralized planning, it was felt that the states needed to have a greater say in planning their expenditures. So the Planning Commission was seen to be imposing its dictates on the states who could have better known what and how much they need. And that is why it was felt that Niti Aayog should be brought in. And let's understand as to how this Niti Aayog is different. The Niti Aayog, which has replaced the Planning Commission, is the new body that gives policy directions. Its founding principle is cooperative federalism. Most important difference is that Niti Aayog has no power to grant funds or make decisions on behalf of the states. It is only an advisory body. So maybe now a new question must be bubbling in your mind, that is the 3-year action plan the new 5-year plan? No, this document only provides a broad roadmap, as I just said, to the government. And the document does not delay any schemes or allocations, as it has no financial powers. Since it need not be approved by the Union Cabinet, its recommendations are not binding on the government. With the government having done away with the categorization of expenditure into plan and non-plan heads, the documents of Niti Aayog have no financial role. There are only policy guide maps for the government here. So with this, we have almost come to an end of our discussion over this, you know, 5-year plans, and we saw that there was this end of the 5-year plans. Uh, you know, uh, as I said, that a key component of the Nehruvian socialism, the economic approach adopted by the India's first Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, the 5-year plans have been laid to rest by the Narendra Modi government, which is NDA government, and the 12th plan was actually the last plan. So, after this Niti Aayog came in. I've already told you as to what this Niti Aayog was. So, with all this detailed knowledge, I really hope that you are satisfactorily filled up with the information that you needed about, the 5-year plans. And based on the session discussion that we have just had, here I have a small quiz for you people. Let's see how well you perform in it, though I already have the answers on the screen for you. This is just for your benefit. So the first 5-year plan was implemented by Dash in the Soviet Union in 1928. A. Karl Marx, B. Joseph Stalin, C. Winston Churchill, D. Abraham Lincoln. And the answer is yes, B. Joseph Stalin. Now, next question is, the first 5-year plan was launched in the year 1951, 1961, 1971, or 1981. And the answer is A. 1951. Here is my third question. Dash is the last deputy chairman of the Planning Commission of India. A. Dr. Manmohan Singh, B. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, C. Brahmadatta, D. Indrajit Singh. And the answer is B. Montek Singh Ahluwalia. Here's my fourth question to you all. The 9th 5-year plan came after 50 years of independence under the leadership of Dash. A. Dr. Manmohan Singh, B. Indira Gandhi, C. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, D. Rajiv Gandhi. And the answer is C. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. I think there was a print typing mistake over here. Here's my next question. The Dash marked the beginning of economic liberalization. A. 6th 5-year plan, B. A. 6th 5-year plan, B. 7th 5-year plan, C. 9th 5-year plan, D. 11th 5-year plan. And the answer is A. The 6th 5-year plan. Here is my next question to you all. The Dash plan, introduced under the leadership of Rajiv Gandhi, laid stress on improving the productivity level of industries by upgrading the technology. A. 6th 5-year plan, B. 7th 5-year plan, C. 9th 5-year plan, D. 11th 5-year plan. And the answer is B. 7th 5-year plan. The seventh question is, the dash was rejected by the newly elected Morarji Desai government. A. Fifth five-year plan, B. Seventh five-year plan, C. Ninth five-year plan, D. 11th five-year plan. And the answer is A. Fifth five-year plan. Here's my eighth question. The dash was introduced in the first year of fifth five-year plan, between 1974 till 78. A. New economic policy. B. Niti Aayog. C. Minimum needs program. D. Competition Act. And the answer is yes, C. Minimum needs program. Here's my second last question. The second plan focused on the development of the public sector and rapid industrialization. A. True. B. False. And the answer is A. True. Here's my last question to you all. The Indira Gandhi government nationalized 14 major Indian banks, and the Green Revolution in India advanced agriculture under which five-year plan? And the options that are given are A. Fourth five-year plan, B. Seventh five-year plan, C. Ninth five-year plan, D. 11th five-year plan. And the answer is A. Fourth five-year plan. So with this, we have come to an end of the session, and I have introduced you to what these five-year plans were, what was the history of five-year plans, how the evolution of five-year plans took place, and how they were introduced in India and grew from the first five-year plan till the 12th five-year plan, and post that Niti Aayog was introduced by Narendra Modi's government. I hope that this session was thoroughly informative for you. That is all from my side. This is Dr. Swati Mishra from International School of Business Management at Suresh Gambiar University, Jaipur, signing off. Thank you so much.